Charlotte's harsh words saddened me deeply. We may not get along, but we're family after all. How could she say something so heartless? I felt lost. Thomas grinned and said, "Well, that went as planned. Mission accomplished." At that moment, I had no idea the chaos that was about to unfold. My name is Violet. I met my husband Thomas at work. I work in the office of a shipping company while Thomas is a truck driver. My first impression was that he's a robust guy, both physically and in personality. He's good at his job and kind to his colleagues. However, he wasn't so adept at the romantic game. Whether it was making a move or proposing, he was like a pitcher who only threw fastballs, no change-ups. But I prefer a straightforward man over a guy who thinks he's a playboy. As our relationship progressed and tensions eased, I found him quite interesting. Above all, he gave me a sense of security that I could rely on him. We got married and were blessed with 2 children. Our son and daughter have moved out and live on their own now. Thomas and I live in a large house. Mom passed away 5 years ago due to illness. Thomas and I still work together at the same shipping company. Thomas has been promoted to a supervisor and now handles dispatching. We had a happy marriage, but one worry was my brother, Jason. That is soft on Jason. Jason has been dreaming of becoming a rock singer since he was a teenager. He's still chasing his dream, pompadour and all, no matter his age. I won't discourage anyone from following their dreams. However, when he runs out of money, he comes to borrow from Dad. Dad, being soft, lends him the money. Dad lending money is fine. But has he ever paid you back, Violet? When you lend money, you should do it with the intention of giving. That means you shouldn't expect it back. Remember that? But Jason thinks he'll somehow make it. He's underestimating life's challenges. Isn't that risky? When I was young, I dreamed of becoming a novelist, Dad said. But Victoria's parents said if I was going to marry her, I needed a stable job. So I gave up my dream and chose to marry. I don't regret getting married, but I do regret giving up my dream. That was the first time I'd ever heard about my dad's younger days. So that's why I want to support Jason's dreams, I said. But it doesn't seem like Jason's putting in much effort. Do you really think he can achieve his dreams while goofing off all day? Thomas asked. Mountain climbing isn't just about conquering the peak. Every step you take along the way, it's part of the story. Well, you sound like a poet. Makes sense, since you wanted to be a novelist. Come on, you're making me blush with such direct praise. I'm not praising you, Thomas chuckled. Initially, I was worried that Jason had some dirt on Dad and was blackmailing him, but it turns out Dad also chases dreams, so he probably understands Jason's desire to escape reality. One day, Jason brought a woman home. Let me introduce you, this is Charlotte. From her name, I expected a dainty woman. She was, well, big. Hi, I'm Charlotte. I'm Violet, the sister. Nice to meet you, Charlotte. Charlotte is 5 years younger than me but much larger in build. Our first impression of her wasn't great. She was curt to both me and Dad, leaving us with the impression that she had poor manners. Eventually, Jason and Charlotte got married, so she became my younger sister-in-law. Neither Jason nor Charlotte held full-time jobs. They were always quitting their part-time jobs in a huff. Charlotte practices jiu-jitsu and has a short temper, often bragging about putting her arrogant bosses or seniors in joint locks. I just hope she never gets arrested for it. Jason brags about stories that aren't really brag-worthy, like headbutting a disrespectful boss. 2 kinds of stories I really can't stand. Bragging about bad behavior in the past and bragging about fights. I think many women also find these kinds of bragging a turnoff. One day, Jason came home to borrow money from Dad again, and I finally spoke up. Jason, you're working, right? Why don't you have any money? I got into an argument with a plant manager just because I forgot to put away a card. Jason replied. I told him it was workplace harassment. He yelled again, so I gave him a flying knee kick to the chair. Charlotte chimed in, seemingly pleased. I decided that if Dad wouldn't say it, I would. Every workplace has people you won't get along with, but you know, even people I initially disliked turned out to be decent later on. I've often been glad I didn't pick a fight. You and I lead different lives. My pride is taller than the One World Trade Center, so yelling at me is practically asking for a flying knee. Jason continued. I couldn't believe my ears when Charlotte cut in. Are you siding with a boss who harasses people? That's not what I'm saying. So you're lecturing me now? You better be ready for this. Jason replied. Ready to take this outside or here's fine too, Charlotte challenged. I was flabbergasted. What is she, a teenager, feeling threatened? I walked away, unable to believe she was actually picking a fight. Jason didn't intervene. Would he have stopped if it were his wife fighting his sister? Getting hurt would be the last straw. I knew I had to watch out for that couple. When I turned 50, Dad got sick and was hospitalized. It wasn't long before we had to say goodbye. People said he lived a long life at 80, but I didn't feel that way. I still wanted to talk about many things with Dad. When Thomas and I were alone, he said, "Violet, actually, Lawrence." "What?" "Never mind. Just tell me later." Before much time had passed since the funeral, Charlotte approached me. "Did Lawrence leave a will?" "A will? Probably not. He was hospitalized so suddenly. And if there's no will, then the inheritance." "You're already talking about inheritance. I guess you're not even sad." "How dare you? Want me to put you in the hospital? Try me." I raised my voice. Charlotte grabbed my arm in anger. I was taken aback but didn't want to apologize. "Should we call the police?" "What are you doing? You made me sound like a monster for bringing up the inheritance, so I thought I'd teach you a life lesson with an arm lock." "You're the one who's wrong, Violet. Enough. Don't yell. What are we going to do about the inheritance?" I was momentarily speechless, but then I glared at Jason. "Aren't you sad that Dad passed away?" I asked. "That's irrelevant. Stop calling me stupid. I don't want to be called stupid by someone as stupid as you," Jason retorted sharply. "What did you just say?" The atmosphere grew tense until Thomas arrived. "What's going on here?" Thomas asked. "Wife, you better tell your husband to raise the kids right," Jason snapped. Those words crossed the line. "I'll pass that message right along to Jason," I replied, irritated. "Good on you. I'm fed up with you, Violet. This makes my decision easier," Jason declared, dropping a bombshell. "I'm the eldest son. That means the house and Dad's inheritance are all mine." "Are you out of your mind?" I exclaimed. "I'm perfectly sane," Jason said stone-facedly. Just as we were stunned by his audacity, Thomas spoke up. "Violet, let's try to keep a cool head. We're not making any progress." "Fine," I said, frustrated. We sat down at the table to hash it out. "The inheritance is all mine and Charlotte's." "Violet, I want you to give up your claim," Jason insisted. "That's ridiculous. Our dad isn't rich. If we split it between two households, there won't be much left," I argued. "There's only two of Dad's children, me and Jason, so it should be divided between us," Charlotte chimed in. But Jason scowled. "Look, Violet, you and Thomas both have jobs and are doing fine. I'm the one pursuing my dreams, so I'm the one who needs the money." "Why don't you get a job, Jason?" I retorted. "Let me finish. Living in the house means no rent, and with the inheritance, I can take on the world. Dad was cheering for me, you know. The best way to honor him is to play Carnegie Hall." "You can't even pack the local park," Phil interjected. "What if I do, Phil? Carnegie Hall. Will you put your money where your mouth is?" Jason challenged. "What are you talking about?" I seriously considered calling the police. I interjected. "Thomas, what do you say? Can you give in?" Jason turned to my husband. "I cannot," Thomas replied calmly. Jason then asked, "So you're asking Violet to relinquish her claim?" "Yes, and you're okay with that, Jason?" I responded, incredulous. "What are you talking about?" "Of course it's not okay," Jason said. At that point, Charlotte glared at me. "Shut up. You've been yapping like a puppy this whole time. Such words should not be tolerated." I glared back at her, incensed. "Is it cute to yap like a puppy only until you're in your 20s? Stop pretending to be a young girl. It's embarrassing for a 50-year-old hack." "Take that back. I won't tolerate insults," Charlotte snapped. "Thomas, wasn't it you who should have set her straight? What do you useless couple you are?" Jason added fuel to the fire. At this point, I couldn't keep quiet. "If you were as big as a hippo, I'd have slapped you a long time ago." Charlotte looked momentarily dumbfounded, then turned to Jason. "Did your sister just call me a hippo?" "Violet, apologize while you still can," Jason demanded. "I'll apologize when Charlotte does." "Enough, both of you," Thomas intervened. "Violet, calm down." "Fine, let's proceed with the disinheritance," Jason declared. I looked at Thomas with wide eyes, searching for reassurance, but something in his gaze told me he had a plan. Why else would he agree to such an unreasonable demand? I had no choice but to trust Thomas. "So, Jason, just to confirm, you're fine with Violet being disinherited?" Thomas asked calmly. "I've been saying that. Stop making me repeat myself. It's annoying, Jason replied irritably. What an infuriating couple. A wife who acts younger than she is and a husband who thinks he's smart but is actually dumb, Charlotte sneered. Leave the money and move out already, Jason demanded. Charlotte's harsh words saddened me. Aren't we still family despite our differences? How could she say such merciless things? Why should we be the ones to leave? I couldn't agree to this. We'll find a new place soon, but we have belongings. Please give us a bit more time, I pleaded. If you take too long, I'll throw everything outside, Charlotte threatened. Try it, and I'll call the police. Think I'll be scared if you mention the police? I'm not afraid. Call the Marines if you want to arrest me, I retorted, unable to contain my anger. I stepped outside, pondering if Dad bore some responsibility. Thomas smiled knowingly at my confusion. It worked. Our plan was a success, he said, reflecting on these moments that made him thankful for our savings. With savings, you don't need to borrow money. Even with zero debt, there are substantial monthly expenses: rent, utilities, food, taxes. Taking on more debt would naturally make things tougher, Thomas explained. I've always made it a point to avoid loans, pay in full for what I buy, and save a bit each month. Years of this effort mean we won't be in a bind when emergencies happen. Maybe Jason set a bad example. He lives impulsively and turns to Dad when he's out of money. It was one thing when Dad was working, but he had no problem borrowing even after Dad retired, I added. I always tell our kids how important it is to save so they don't end up like that. Thomas and I settled into our new condo after finishing unpacking. Thomas broached the topic cautiously. Let's consult a lawyer first to initiate the renunciation of inheritance. Are we really giving it up? He asked. That's when Thomas finally disclosed what he had almost mentioned before. While playing chess with Lawrence, he quietly mentioned that he lost all his savings and is in debt, Thomas revealed. What? Because of Jason? I gasped, shocked. Yes, that made them even more unforgivable. Maybe that couple also shortened Dad's life, Thomas conjectured. You're not entirely right, but you're close, Thomas continued, surprising me with another revelation. Charlotte had yelled loudly at Dad and pushed him with both hands from behind. It wasn't just a one-time prank. It happened multiple times. Dad started fearing it was an attempt to induce a heart attack and couldn't say anything when Jason came to borrow money. I never thought they'd go that far. In other words, Lawrence had much more debt than assets. Do you get what I'm saying? Yes, now I understand. Inheritors receive not just assets but also debt. If the debt exceeds the assets, you can renounce the inheritance. Let's ask the lawyer. That's the best course. We consulted a lawyer and successfully renounced the inheritance. Just as I suspected, Jason and his wife barged into our new condo. Violet, you set us up, didn't you? Jason accused. Set you up? What are you talking about? I replied, playing dumb. Don't play dumb. There's no inheritance from Dad, just debt. You knew, didn't you? He snapped. I had no idea. This won't end with just an arm lock. Be ready for a chokehold, I threatened, pulling out my mobile phone. Hello, is this the police? I began, but Charlotte grabbed my phone and shut it off. Violet, how are you going to take responsibility for this? She challenged. That's when Thomas stepped in. Jason, I recall asking you multiple times if it's okay to relinquish the inheritance, right? So you knew it was drowning in debt, didn't you? I had no idea, Jason muttered. Whenever Jason needed money, Lawrence would lend it without a second thought. He gave out big amounts like it was nothing. I assumed Lawrence must be well off, I explained. Jason was at a loss for words, but Charlotte interjected. Nice try, but you're not weaseling your way out of this. We inherited those debts. You two need to do something about it. What responsibility are you talking about? My spouse and I are not responsible for any of this, I retorted. Hey, are you going to do something about this or not? Threats won't work on me, Charlotte challenged. Or should we lay it all out for a third party? I'll share every detail of what happened to Jason. Are you okay with that? How would I know that Dad went into debt just to give Jason money? If I knew, I would have stopped it. Do you even realize you shortened Dad's life? Jason finally responded. Unable to respond further, Jason stayed silent, but Charlotte remained defiant. If you're going to say that, are you okay with both of you ending up in the hospital? Enough of this nonsense. If you lay a hand on me or coerce me, it's jail time. I warned Charlotte. Your threats don't work on me. You're 45 and talking like some high school delinquent. Charlotte smirked and glanced back at Thomas. Wait, were those lines aimed at me? Right after saying it, you coerced me. Coercion is a serious crime, you know. You won't get probation, idiot. Are you a judge now? It's complex to decide whether probation applies in any crime. Don't talk nonsense when you know nothing, I fired back. Seeing Charlotte's anger intensify, Thomas turned to Jason. Jason, are you okay with this? Charlotte, just shut up for a second, Jason finally said, clearly feeling the tension rise. Excuse me, who are you telling to shut up? Charlotte snapped back, her menacing glare now palpable with danger. I said, if you want to fight, do it outside. I won't allow it in my house. Let's calm down for now. As Jason stepped out into the hallway, Charlotte followed. I quickly closed the door and locked it. Their arguing voices echoed, but I was more worried about causing a disturbance in the neighborhood. Did you just tell me to shut up? What are you going to do if I call the police? Charlotte threatened. Don't worry, I'll call an ambulance in a minute, I replied calmly. A few seconds later, Jason's screams echoed down the hall. I pretended not to hear him. Shortly after, I heard what sounded like a cry of pain, but I dismissed it. Jason and Charlotte had severed ties with our family with their insults. Whether they divorced or Charlotte got arrested for assault, it was none of my concern. A few days later, I received a call from Jason. Violet, I was wrong. Will you help me? He pleaded. Who is this? I feigned ignorance. Don't be like that. We're siblings, right? He continued, his voice strained. I couldn't help but feel it was too late. It turned out Jason was in the hospital. Apparently, Charlotte had broken his arm. It felt surreal, almost like something out of a comic book. Ever heard the term you reap what you sow? I'm genuinely sorry. Could you cut me some slack? I can't afford the hospital bills, Jason begged. That's unfortunate, I replied coldly. No matter how much he pleaded, I kept my distance. Jason seemed speechless after my harsh words. Switching the call to Thomas, I ended it abruptly. Don't call him by his first name. We're no longer family, I asserted before hanging up. Thomas and I did go to the hospital, but not to visit. It was better to settle it face to face. Jason pleaded politely, please help me. Debt collectors have come to the hospital's first floor. The nurse told me I'm scared to death. Thomas looked stern. After the insults you and your spouse hurled, it's only natural for us to cut ties. That's not what I meant. If we're not cutting ties, then why renounce the inheritance? Jason looked down, his voice softening. I apologize for what I've done, but I need your help. I have no one else to turn to. What about Charlotte? Jason pleaded. We're divorced. A family falling apart, I replied somberly. Then she's at the police station for assault. It felt unreal. You repeatedly called my wife an idiot. If I had called Charlotte that, you'd never forgive me, Jason said, troubled. People who spew hate often don't remember what they've said, but those on the receiving end don't forget. I have a good memory. I remember every word you two have said. I've heard it from Charlotte as well, Thomas interjected calmly. The wife should be properly disciplined by the husband, Jason attempted to justify. What does that even mean? Explain it to me, Thomas pressed on logically. What did Charlotte mean when she said a wife should lay down her body? Is that even something you should say to a woman? Jason seemed to have forgotten not just his own comments but also those made by Charlotte. Yelling like a little puppy, that's a clear insult. As for my dear wife, you called her a young one-ape or a 50-year-old hack. Don't repeat it. Sorry, Jason muttered. Thomas didn't let up. You said it to me as well when I asked repeatedly if I should disclaim my inheritance. You told me to stop making you repeat yourself because it's annoying. It's too late for any excuses now. Jason lowered his head on the hospital bed, looking crestfallen. I'm really sorry. Can you please find it in your heart to forgive me? No way. Charlotte called my wife an old hag, and you insulted me by saying I'm not mentally sharp. By the way, what does not mentally sharp mean? Explain it to me, Thomas demanded, glaring at the trembling Jason. Jason's eyes widened with a terrified look. If I weren't in a hospital, I'd be yelling right now. Let's just cut ties off completely, Thomas declared firmly. You're the one who said to leave the money and move out quickly, I added, supporting Thomas's decision. Thomas looked down at the dejected Jason, then turned to me. Shall we go? Yes, I nodded. After all was said, I thought Thomas might end up offering financial help out of a sense of divine mercy, but he stood his ground. As we left the hospital, a smile crossed my face. I saw your scary side today. There's nothing like that. Be kind to me, okay? Thomas replied with a gentle smile. Of course, I said softly. The storm has passed. From now on, I hope for peaceful days, basking in the warmth of spring sunlight. What? What's going on? No matter how many times I try, my apartment key won't work. I've just returned from a business trip and find myself completely locked out. I try to reach Randy, who should be home, but there's no response. Peeking through the keyhole, I see that the apartment is empty. I'm sure I'm at the right place, so what's going on? Where's my stuff? Where did Randy disappear to? Panicked, I rush to my in-laws' house, and there is Randy. As soon as I arrive, Randy looks at me and says, "Who are you?" Speechless, I watch as Randy smirks triumphantly. I could never have imagined the ending that awaited me. My name is Sharon, and I am 32 years old. I am a working housewife living with Randy. We've been married for 3 years. Randy was originally a colleague at work, and we were fierce competitors. He was a good rival, but also my biggest supporter. It didn't take long for us to start dating, and we got engaged after a year. But there was one thing that worried me about getting married. It was something Randy said as we were about to register our marriage. "Sharon, I'm thinking of quitting my job after we get married." "What? Quitting your job? Why would you do that?" I asked, stunned. "Actually, I've been thinking about this for a while. I want to use my experience to start my own company." "Your own company?" "Yeah, I want to start a business and do something bigger. So please let me give it my best shot." He bowed his head, and I could see the sincerity in his eyes. I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to support Randy as his biggest advocate, but quitting his job to start a business was a huge risk. We were married now, and I hoped to have kids someday. Was it really necessary to sacrifice our stable life for this dream? I couldn't voice my concerns to Randy. In the end, he quit his job as soon as we got married and used all our savings to start a staffing agency. People often said, "Wow, Randy is amazing. Aren't you proud your husband is a CEO?" But I didn't feel that way at all. My female colleagues, especially my good friend Marilyn, seemed to understand my unease. Starting a business right after getting married is too risky, Marilyn often said, echoing my thoughts. I agree with you, Marilyn. I wanted to say no, but I couldn't. Be careful, Sharon. Randy tends to push things through based on his mood. I know, I've seen him make mistakes at work because of that. You'll have to keep an eye on him, Sharon. I will. I'll listen to him regularly and do what I can. But the truth is, I've only ever done my current job, so the world of entrepreneurship is completely unknown to me. Why did Randy suddenly want to start a business, and why a staffing agency? I asked, but Randy never gave me a clear answer. Though Randy had started his own company, it seemed he hadn't thought things through. He hired several employees right off the bat, but with little work coming in, the labor costs were skyrocketing. In today's world, there are countless staffing agencies online, so offering face-to-face staffing services was, to put it bluntly, reckless. Randy used to be competent at his job, but ever since he quit, his ideas seemed to be running dry. Sure enough, the company ran out of funds in no time, and employees started quitting. Finally, unable to pay salaries, Randy approached me. Sharon, can you lend me $20,000? What, $20,000? Do you even realize how much money that is? I do, but what choice do I have? I have to pay the employees. That may be true, but that's not my problem. You are my wife, and you are saying it's not your problem. You married me, committing to a lifetime together, right? Right, so you should help me out when I'm in trouble. Randy spoke as if he had done nothing wrong. I couldn't find the words to respond to his cold, disdainful gaze. For the next few days, Randy kept demanding the $20,000, adding insults like, "This happened because you didn't support me as a wife. It's all your fault. You need to cover the financial shortfall." I was berated daily and even faced some physical aggression. As days went by, I started to believe that maybe it was my fault. A year into our marriage, Randy's company teetered on the edge of bankruptcy. By then, my savings had significantly dwindled, mostly drained by efforts to keep Randy's company afloat. Despite the dire situation, Randy refused to consider shutting down the business. Instead, he sought help from his parents, my father-in-law, an average office worker, and my mother-in-law, a homemaker, had little to spare, but they couldn't turn away their desperate son. Ultimately, they mortgaged their house to lend him the money. Learning of this, even I was taken aback. How far would any parent go for their child? If Randy's company failed, They'd lose their home. Unfortunately, my fears materialized when Randy's company collapsed within just 6 months, leaving us drowning in debt. Following the fallout, Randy seemed to lose all drive to work. He spent his days idling around the house. Unable to tolerate it any longer, I confronted him multiple times. Randy, look, we're not exactly swimming in cash either. I've exhausted my savings. Can you please start looking for a job? What? How can you be so heartless? I'm devastated after losing my company. This is not the time for that. We owe money to your parents. They'll be fine. Their house is collateral. Do you even understand what that means? If things continue like this, they'll lose their house. It doesn't matter to us. My parents are old. They might as well be useful for once. I can't believe this. I never thought you'd be this kind of person. From that point on, cracks began to appear in our marriage. It's been about 6 months since Randy's company went bankrupt, and he shows no signs of finding a job. He's doing day labor once a week and spending all the money on himself. I've been dipping into my savings and cutting corners to make ends meet. Then one day, during a break at work, my mother-in-law called. Ah, Sharon, sorry for the sudden call, but I need to talk to you. Hello, mother-in-law. What's going on? Could you lend us some money? If we can't pay back the loan by the end of the month, we lose our house. It seemed my worst fears were coming true. I told my mother-in-law, let me think about it. I've already talked to Randy, but he said, I don't have any money. If you lose the house, so be it. What? Randy said that? What should we do, Sharon? We're going to lose our home. Calm down, I have an idea. After hanging up, I called my father, who answered immediately. Hey Dad, it's Sharon. A long time, not talk. How are you? I'm fine, but there's a problem. What happened? Randy's company went bankrupt, and now his parents might lose their house. What? Why? After explaining the situation, my father agreed to help financially, even though Randy was clearly at fault. My dad said, he is the man you chose, and didn't blame me. My father is a wealthy real estate investor, and I've never had to worry about money. The rental income alone is a considerable amount, so to be honest, I never had any problems making ends meet until I got married. But when I got a job, I decided to be financially independent and refuse any support from him. And Randy ruined all of that. I felt guilty, but I had no choice but to accept my father's help to save my in-laws. I kept it a secret from Randy and transferred the money to my in-laws. Why didn't I tell Randy? I've only told him that my dad is a real estate agent. If he found out about my father's wealth, I feared he'd change his attitude and start demanding money. If that happened, it would be the end of us. If we are going to continue living together, I don't want to grow to resent Randy. That's why I have to keep my father's wealth a secret from him. To avoid hurting my beloved parents and in-laws, I chose to continue my relationship with Randy. When I told my mother-in-law about my father's financial help, she said, "Are you sure? You and your father saved us. It's fine. I'd rather avoid any unnecessary drama." All right, if you say so, we'll pay back the money, even if it takes time. Don't worry, I'll help with that too. Thank you, Sharon. You've been a lifesaver. I could hear the tremor in my mother-in-law's voice over the phone. I was glad that I could help her. Knowing that she had been pushed into such a corner, I felt a sense of relief in being able to assist. But Randy's behavior was deteriorating. He was increasingly absent from home, and when I asked where he was, he retorted with, "None of your business," yet he still demanded money for groceries. Then, I had to embark on a business trip for 3 days. I was worried but also relieved. 3 days without seeing Randy's face. I had married him out of love, but now his presence was a burden. 3 days later, I returned from my trip. From the airport, I headed home with a gloomy feeling. I should have been eager to get home, but the thought of seeing Randy again filled me with dread. When I tried to unlock the door, something felt off. What's going on? No matter how many times I tried, the key wouldn't work. Randy wasn't responding to my calls. It seemed like I was locked out. What should I do if Randy is not home? I can't get in. And it wasn't just that. Peering through the peephole, I saw that the apartment was empty. The house shouldn't be wrong, but why? Where's my stuff? Where did Randy go? Panicked, I forgot to call the management company and called my parents instead, but they didn't answer. So, I decided to go to my in-laws' house where I could also give them the souvenir I'd bought. When I arrived, Randy was there. "Randy, what are you doing here?" My mother-in-law spoke first. He showed up out of the blue, asking to stay for a few days. "What, Randy? What's going on?" I couldn't get into our apartment. Randy chuckled and looked down at me. Who are you? I was at a loss for words, but Randy wore a smug grin on his face. Still, I mustered the courage to speak. What are you talking about, Randy? What about the house keys? Isn't it obvious? I've already moved out of that house. What? Oh, and by the way, we're already divorced, so we are nothing to each other now. I've got a new girlfriend, so you should just go. A new girlfriend? Caught off guard, my mind went blank as Randy shoved his phone screen in my face. There he was hugging the young woman, both of them smiling happily. In that moment, everything felt meaningless, and I lost the will to think. Fine, whatever. This marriage was over a long time ago. I slumped to the floor, and Randy looked down at me, grinning. Then, with a loud smack, Randy fell to the ground. His mother-in-law had slapped him. What? Mother, what are you doing? What have you done, young man? What do you mean, what have I done? I just left a useless wife, and I'm planning to marry my new girlfriend. His mother-in-law started to tremble, her face turning red. Randy, do you really not know that you have this life because of Sharon? When your business was failing and this house was about to be foreclosed, Sharon asked her father for a loan. My father-in-law did what Randy was visibly shocked, probably never expecting this. His mother-in-law didn't hold back. And yet you, how much trouble do you need to cause others to be satisfied, Randy? Even your mistress grew tired of you and disappeared. Serves you right, this is the fate of a man who lived only for himself. After the divorce, I moved back in with my parents. They're worried about me, fresh out of a failed marriage, but truth be told, I have no regrets. I have a job and a loving family who stand by my side. That alone makes me feel truly blessed. From now on, I want to live my life to the fullest for the people who truly care about me. The moment I had been dreading finally arrived. My husband, who has tormented me endlessly, and his ever-judgmental mother have moved in. I can't even count the number of tears I've shed and the times I've been hurt. Despite it all, I've held on, trying my best to fulfill my role as a wife and homemaker. But my husband never seemed to care about my struggles. He even decided to move his mother into our home without consulting me. Is your mom all moved in? I asked. Of course she is, he replied. Well, here's the thing. She's settled in, and in fact, I just finished moving back to my parents' home. Wait, what? Your parents' place? His voice over the phone was tinged with panic. I could tell he hadn't seen this coming. But don't think it ends here. I owe you for all the pain you've caused me. My name is Eleanor, a 44-year-old homemaker. I met Raymond at a party when I was 20, and we instantly clicked. Just 3 months later, he confessed his feelings, and we started dating. A year later, as I turned 21, he asked, "Will you marry me?" A year after our marriage, I became pregnant, and our first son was born. I thought I would have the fairy tale life I had dreamed of during my school days, but life wasn't that simple. Hey, is dinner ready yet? Did you make the bed? That's what Raymond always says when he comes home from work. I sometimes wonder if he thinks of me just as a maid. I'm sorry, I got a bit tied up. I'll get everything ready now, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Seriously, don't you think about how tired I am after work? I deal with so much stress to provide for our family. And remember, I'm a manager. Raymond would always start ranting about his job whenever things didn't go his way, making snide remarks. He wasn't like this when we first got married. People often ask if I'm okay with how he behaves. Of course, I'm not. It's unbearable. But honestly, I do appreciate that he brings in the money. Thanks to Raymond's good salary, we've never had financial troubles. But imagine if I challenged him and he retorted, "You're defying me." Fine, I'll stop contributing to the house then. I wouldn't know what to do. So even if he says a bit much sometimes, I try to tolerate it, though I wish I could say it was always easy. But with the way Raymond's been acting lately, even that tolerance is strained. Like the other day, he ranted, "Why aren't the clothes dry? You didn't even use the dryer, did you? I told you before I like my clothes feeling cozy. They need to be fluffy from the dryer. I had a lot on my plate with shopping and chores, so I didn't get to the dryer. That's not the point. I work hard every day, but what about you? Aren't you a homemaker? Shouldn't you have time for at least this?" Raymond never does household chores. He believes that's the wife's job. Just because I'm a homemaker doesn't mean I always have free time. I wish he'd help out a little. It was the same story when our child was born. Always some excuse about being busy or tired from work. So I've done all the household and childcare duties by myself. But there's another source of stress. My mother-in-law. Eleanor, did you clean this properly? And what are you planning for dinner tonight? Surely not some takeaway. Whenever my mother-in-law visits, she's always like this. She constantly looks for my mistakes and never hesitates to criticize. Both mother and son act similarly. Like they say, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And today she started again. Eleanor, how many times have I told you to clean the house every day to make it comfortable for my son? Why don't you? Are you ignoring my advice on purpose? This is why I was against my son marrying someone like you. You can't even manage the house properly. Just looking at you infuriates me. Constant criticism from Raymond and my mother-in-law. I endure it all with a smile. But there's one thing I just can't overlook, my mother-in-law's gambling habit. Whenever she has the chance, she's playing poker, slot machines, roulette, or craps. She just loves to gamble and spends all her money in the blink of an eye. Worse still, she laughs about it, and Raymond just laughs along with her. Hold on a second. Whose money do you think you're using? The money my mother-in-law spends on gambling comes from our household savings. I've brought this up to Raymond multiple times, but he just brushes it off. Hey, could you tell Mom? I mean, I could tell her, but if I do, I think she'd be really shocked. Plus, I'm so busy with work. I don't think I can discuss it calmly. He always comes up with these excuses and never asks. So I decide to convey Raymond's message to my mother-in-law for him. Why can't a mother use the money her son earns? He told me I can use as much as I want, she retorted, thinking that Raymond would back me up. I say Raymond feels the same way. Could you please stop using our household savings without asking? Right, honey. But Raymond interjects, what are you talking about? The household savings are for all three of us, excluding only Mom. Is she wrong? Sorry, Mom. Don't listen to her, she's lying. You can use the money as you always have. This is how Raymond always changes his story depending on who he's talking to. Moreover, he started blaming me for my mother-in-law's gambling habits, saying they worsened after we got married 3 months ago. That's just not true. Even before our marriage, my mother-in-law was gambling frequently. Whenever I went shopping, I'd see her coming out of the local poker club. But when I bring this up to Raymond, he accuses me of lying and then ignores the issue. He'll never see his mother's true colors. These remarks keep coming, and I'm getting fed up. Oh, look at the time. I should get going. Wait, Mom, you didn't forget about our plan, right? How are the preparations? Yes, they're well underway. What plan? What are these two up to? I'm taken aback by Raymond's sudden question and try to figure out their scheme. With that, my mother-in-law, humming a tune, leaves in high spirits. At last, she's gone. I think to myself. I look over, and Raymond is grinning from ear to ear, waving until his mother's out of sight. A week later, I finally understood the meaning behind Raymond's words about preparations. Have a good day, I say, but there's only a slam as usual. Raymond leaves for work without responding to my farewell. While most couples would greet each other with smiles, that warmth is long gone between us. I gaze out the window and see a neighboring family looking so happy as they walk by. I remember the days when my son and I used to go for walks just like that. Lost in my thoughts in the morning, the doorbell rings. Yes, who is it? Oh, it's you, mother-in-law. Wait, where's Raymond? I wasn't expecting her to show up today, especially not this early in the morning. Oh, something came up at his work, so he had to go in unexpectedly. I see. Why on earth is she here? She's not expecting to have breakfast with me, is she? No way she would think of doing that, or would she? A flurry of thoughts about my mother-in-law raced through my mind. Then she says, why are you standing there looking so blank? Get things ready. Ready for what? I haven't eaten anything since this morning. I'm hungry, so make me breakfast. And make sure this doesn't happen again. What does she mean by from now on? The words get ready that Raymond mentioned earlier and mother-in-law's from now on phrase make me uneasy for some reason. I had a terrible feeling about this, feeling anxious about their comments. Mother-in-law pressures me to make breakfast. I apologize and start preparing the meal. Meanwhile, mother-in-law observes me, not even blinking. It feels more like monitoring than observing. Maybe it's hard to do under her piercing gaze. Silently and earnestly, I prepare the breakfast. Suddenly, mother-in-law says, it's pitiful to think my son eats this poorly presented food every day. It looks terrible and probably tastes just as bad. I'd love to know how you managed to cook so poorly. She ridicules me, mockingly laughing and complaining. Why do I have to hear this first thing in the morning? What was supposed to be a pleasant morning feels as if it had turned into a downpour. Sorry for the wait, it took you long enough. How much time do you need for a meal like this? Maybe you should attend a cooking class, then you might be able to cook something decent. Even then, it'd be like getting a D instead of an F. Having a meal alone with my mother-in-law for the first time, seeing her stern face while eating, I lost my appetite, and the meal it put so much effort into tasted bland. Suddenly, my mother-in-law sat down her fork, stating, "I don't even feel like eating this. Clear it away." "I'm sorry, I just can't take this anymore. I wish she'd leave sooner." But little did I know, my wish would be shattered in no time. Ring, ring. Excuse me for a moment. "Hey, Mom's there, right? Let me talk to her," Raymond requested, handing the phone to my mother-in-law. After Raymond's request, she exclaimed, "You told me we'd discuss that matter, making me come over so early. Now you say you're at work. What's going on?" "Sorry, something came up. I'll be back before noon. Just relax till then." "Hurry up. Being with her is just stressful." She ended the call with Raymond and returned the phone to me with a slight throw. Trying to ask what Raymond had said, she just glared and told me he'd be back before noon. 3 hours later, Raymond returned home and immediately asked her, "Sorry, Mom, so are you ready?" "Yes, just need to pack my things." Before I could process it, Raymond dropped a bombshell. "From now on, Mom will live here too." What? It was a shock. I always thought it would be just the two of us living here, but now my mother-in-law will be moving in. The mere thought of my mother-in-law coming here terrifies me. Living a life constantly getting snide remarks from Raymond and my mother-in-law every day, I just can't bear the thought of it. "Mom, I'll help you move on my next day off." "That would be helpful, but don't bring her along. We don't need someone useless." "Don't worry, it'll just be me." The shocking twist left my mind blank, unable to process anything. That evening, Raymond and his mom went out for dinner alone. I pondered our future. How would I coexist with the two of them? Was I just supposed to endure everything, or was there another way? The same thoughts kept replaying, but no answers came. Lost in my despair, tears spilled when suddenly, ring ring, a phone call. Wiping away my tears, I answered, and the voice on the other end was, "Oh," a call from the most unexpected person. The familiar voice echoed in my ear when I picked up the phone. "Mom, it's been a while." "Eric, it has indeed. Have you been well?" "Yeah, I'm good. Granddad and Granny are also doing well. We're all getting along." It was my son, Eric, on the other end. After graduating from college, Eric took a job at a company near our family home. Because his work was close, he had chosen to live with his grandparents away from us. "When will you come to visit? It's been years since you last did. The two of them really want to see you." "I'm sorry, I've been so busy and just couldn't make it to the family home." "Busy with what? Isn't it because of Dad and Grandmother?" He hit the nail on the head. The reason I couldn't visit was indeed because of those two. Raymond didn't like the idea of me visiting my parents. As a homemaker, Raymond only sees me as a mere housekeeper. He has this ridiculous notion that I should always be taking care of the home, and his mother shared the same view. She too only saw me as a convenient housekeeper, always expecting me to tend to the house. So I felt trapped, unable to leave and just living within the confines of our home. It felt like I was a bird caged up. Eric knew this. He once visited this house and remembered the words Raymond and mother-in-law had hurled at me. "Aren't you a homemaker? Then you need to do your household duties properly. A housekeeper who can't even do chores is useless anywhere. Be grateful you're even needed here by us." It was then that Eric first realized the treatment I was getting from the two of them. "I thought as much. I'm sorry for making you worry." "Listen, Mom, I have an idea." Then Eric suggested something unexpected. It was something I hadn't ever considered. "Really? Are you serious?" "Of course. It's to help you, Mom." While it might seem obvious, Eric's words became the lifeline I needed for my hellish life. From the next day, while Raymond was at work, I started implementing what Eric had told me to do, being cautious not to let Raymond notice and always vigilant for the often unexpectedly appearing mother-in-law. There were a few close calls. "Hey, have you been up to something lately?" "Why do you ask?" "Mom mentioned it. She said you've been acting differently. You're not cheating on me, are you?" Last time, Raymond's ridiculous misunderstanding saved me, but I can't underestimate my mother-in-law. She's sharp. I need to be more careful and not let my guard down around her. Still, it's clear that Raymond doesn't really care about me. Well, that's fine. It actually makes things easier for me. In fact, it's a relief. I can't wait to see how they'll react to what comes next. Ring ring. Mom, how far along are you with the preparations? I've got everything ready and I've made a lot of progress. Now we just wait for the day. Speaking of which, do you know when grandmother is moving in? She's moving in the day after tomorrow. I overheard them talking about it when they were in a good mood. I have to make sure they pay for everything they've done to me. The climax is approaching. The morning my mother-in-law is set to arrive. Don't slack off just because I'm not around. Also, help Mom with the luggage when she gets here and keep the house clean. Mom said she won't forgive even a speck of dust. I understand. After seeing Raymond off, I start the final preparations. Then the doorbell rings. Good morning, Mom. Eric, I'm sorry, but can you help me? Of course, let's get this done quickly before grandmother arrives. With Eric's help, we finalize everything, and 30 minutes later, we're ready. All right, let's go. I hop into Eric's car, and we head to a certain place. Ring ring. Hello, the moment has arrived. Raymond and mother-in-law have tormented me endlessly. I don't even know how many tears I've shed or how much pain I've endured. Yet I've persisted, trying my best as a homemaker. But Raymond never seemed to care about my struggles, and he decided to move in with his mother without discussing it with me. Is Mom all settled in? Of course she is. But guess what? Yes, she's all settled. And I've just finished moving back to my parents' home. What? Back to your parents? Raymond's panic was evident even over the phone. But that's not the end of it. He's got a lot coming his way. I delivered the final blow to Raymond today, the day we get divorced. The divorce papers already filled out with your name are on the table when you get home. All you need to do is sign and take them to the courthouse, just to make sure there's no delay. I've arranged for a lawyer to accompany you. The lawyer will also discuss the division of our assets. Raymond, taken aback, blurted out, "Wait, what are you talking about? Divorce? Are you kidding me? No matter what you say, it won't change my mind. Oh, by the way, we don't have a single cent in our savings." What? That can't be true. I've been contributing every month. Yes, but your dear mother gambled all that money away. We have nothing left. What I suggest is that you and your mother figure things out. Good luck. Right after ending the call with Raymond, his mother showed up at the house, arms laden with bags, enthusiastically ringing the doorbell. I didn't answer. Infuriated, she yelled, "Hey, open up. How long are you going to keep me waiting out here? Open the damn door, you wretched woman." Screaming and swearing at the front door attracted the attention of a passerby. They suspected her of causing trouble and called the police. In just a few minutes, officers arrived and took her away. About 30 minutes later, a distraught Raymond, unable to focus on his work after hearing the news, rushed home, but I was nowhere to be seen. The only thing waiting for him was the divorce papers on the table. The sight left him completely speechless, and he just sat down, devastated. 2 hours later, the lawyer arrived and accompanied a despondent Raymond to the courthouse to submit the divorce papers. At last, our divorce was finalized. The next day, after being released from police custody, Raymond's mother came home only to find her son deeply affected by the shock of the divorce. Although Raymond had planned to live with her, the trauma of the divorce made him take a leave from work, and a month later, he resigned. With no income, he had to sell the new house they had just built. They managed to get by with the money from the sale, but his gambling-addicted mother depleted it all. Rumor has it they now live like homeless people in a nearby park. After the divorce, I began to live peacefully at my parents' house. The money from the sale of the house came to me as well. With that money, I commented, "This place is lovely." Yeah, it's a popular resort hotel these days. I was on vacation with my family, finally free from the nightmare. I could live my life on my own terms. That joy is unparalleled.